"You're not getting any of tonight's pot roast. Here, eat this instead," my mother-in-law says, handing me a bowl. I look at it, but this is leftover soup and salad from 2 days ago. It might have gone bad. "Don't be wasteful, you can handle it, right?" she snaps. "I don't want to waste good meat on you." "I can't eat this," I murmur, but she just glares at me. "Leftovers are perfect for you, stop complaining and eat." This is what my life has become. My mother-in-law always treats me like this. She's so rude, and it really gets under my skin. My name is Mary, I'm 27, balancing work and home life, and I got married just a year ago. Right now, we're living with my husband's family. I never wanted to live with my in-laws, but my husband is the oldest son, so we didn't have much choice. Both he and his mom have traditional values. My father-in-law passed away, and my husband said he wanted to be there for his mom. I don't know why, though, she's still full of life. My brother-in-law is single and works overseas, so he can't help, but still, I hate living here. Lately, my husband has even started being mean to me, like he's copying his mom. He was never like this before we got married. Now he acts superior, always finding reasons to yell at me. It gives me a headache. "Hey, why is my shirt so wrinkled?" he snaps one morning. "Wrinkled? I ironed it." "Not well enough," he interrupts. "Can't you do something so simple, right? You're a useless wife." "That's not fair," I say quietly, hurt. "Are you talking back to me?" he sneers. "Your face is as wrinkled as this shirt. Seriously, you look older than you are. It's such a turn-off." I stand there, stunned, wondering what happened to the man I married. Before we got married, my husband used to call me adorable and treated me like a princess. Now, he insults my parents and laughs about it. I don't understand why he's become so cruel. I'm not wrinkled like he says. Ironically, he's the one who's starting to bald, and sometimes I catch myself wishing he'd just go completely bald one day. Our marriage is still new, but I'm already worried about the future. Sometimes, I even think about divorce. I feel exhausted every day. After work, I come home and do all the house chores, leaving me feeling like I'll collapse. My mother-in-law doesn't help at all. She just spends her day sitting in front of the TV, with crumbs all over the floor that I have to clean up. I wish she'd at least use a plate. One evening after dinner, my mother-in-law suddenly brought up an idea. "Hey, let's all go to a spa resort for the new year." "Oh, that sounds great," my husband replied enthusiastically. "I'll make the reservation first thing tomorrow." They both seemed so happy about it. Honestly, I didn't want to go anywhere with them, but I did love spa resorts. This one had recently been on TV, so despite everything, I was excited about going. After that, my mother-in-law mentioned something else. She looked at me and said, "We only have a small car, so I was hoping we could borrow your family's minivan. That way, we can bring plenty of luggage." I agreed to ask my dad. He has both a minivan and a small car. He usually drives the smaller car and uses the minivan for camping trips. When I called him, he was happy to lend it to us. With that, we prepared for the New Year trip. I was incredibly busy with year-end cleaning. As usual, while my mother-in-law barely moved from the sofa, she just laid there, watching TV all day. Finally, New Year's Day arrived, and I woke up excited for the trip, but when I looked at the alarm clock, I froze. It was already 8:30, I'd overslept, and my husband wasn't there. I checked the bathroom, but he wasn't there either. Where could he be? Where's everyone? Did they go somewhere without me? I checked my mother-in-law's room, but she wasn't there. Feeling uneasy, I rushed to the living room where I'd left my phone to charge overnight. There was a text notification from my mother-in-law. Her message read, "We're going to have fun. We never booked a place for you. You can spend a lonely New Year alone. It's fine if the bride doesn't come along." My heart sank. She'd planned all along to leave me behind and go on the trip with my husband. I felt a mix of sadness and anger. They'd even turned off my alarm so I'd oversleep, and now it made sense why she'd encouraged me to drink so much the night before. She wanted me to pass out. I regretted drinking that much, but at least they hadn't drugged me. Even though I was furious, I realized getting angry wouldn't change anything. I decided to make the best of my time alone. I thought about going to my parents' house, but they were away on a plane trip, so there was no point. Instead, I ordered pizza and spent New Year's alone. When my mother-in-law and husband returned from their trip, they looked so happy. "It was amazing, the best time ever. I want to go again, without you." "Of course, Mary," my mother-in-law said with a grin. Then she handed me a small package. "Here, this is your souvenir." I looked at it, wondering what it could possibly be. It's a stone I found lying around. It suits you perfectly. Oh, is that so? I replied, trying to hide my frustration. I couldn't help but think that my mother-in-law was being extremely spiteful. Frustrated, I decided to return the minivan to my parents' house, hoping they'd be home by now. When I arrived, my father came out to greet me. "Did you enjoy the spa resort? That famous spa should have been quite satisfying," he said. "I didn't go, because I'm the bride," I replied, a bit bitterly. My mother-in-law told me it was fine if the bride didn't come. I woke up, and they were already gone. "What?" he exclaimed. After that, my father began doing something I hadn't expected. He had me sit in the passenger seat of the minivan and started driving us back to my in-laws' house. As I glanced at him, I could see he was angry, and that surprised me. My father is usually so calm, but any dad would be upset if his daughter were treated that way. When we arrived, my father stormed into my in-laws' house holding something in his hand. My mother-in-law came out. "Oh, hello, and Happy New Year. Sorry for borrowing your minivan," she greeted us with a fake smile. "Happy New Year," my father replied. "Speaking of which, you left our daughter behind, didn't you?" "No, Mary said she had a fever and couldn't go, so we reluctantly had to leave her behind. I even offered to take care of her," my mother-in-law lied smoothly, a smirk on her face. She'd definitely never said anything like that, and I wasn't even sick. I couldn't believe she'd lie so openly. I started to wonder if something was wrong with her. "Oh, really?" my father responded coolly, "but our daughter told us she received a text saying, 'It's fine if the bride doesn't come.'" "Did I say that? I don't remember," she replied, shrugging. "Yes, you did. Look at this text," I said, showing her the message on my phone. Still, she insisted she was innocent, even after being shown the proof. I was honestly shocked at how shamelessly she could deny it. In a strange way, her persistence was almost impressive. "You're still saying that, huh?" my father said, glaring at her. "You're truly a sad person. Oh, by the way, can I charge you for cleaning the car's interior?" "What? Why?" she asked, startled. "Because you dirted it, with a married man, no less. What a filthy, disgusting scene." What are you talking about?" my mother-in-law stammered. "This, right here," my father said, holding up a device, captured by this dual camera. What my father had in his hand was a dash cam. This model has dual cameras, so it records not only the outside of the car but also the inside. The benefit of recording the interior is that it can provide proof of safe driving. My mother-in-law, not knowing much about cars or car accessories, probably didn't realize this was a dual camera, but that still didn't explain what she was doing with a married man in the first place. I regretted watching the footage my father played back for us. There were images of my mother-in-law in an inappropriate posture with an unknown man. Even though my father-in-law is no longer with us, it's beyond outrageous to be doing something like that with a married man, and in the family car, no less. "This happened on the exact day you borrowed the car," my father said in disgust. "How shameful." Wait, this doesn't mean we were doing anything inappropriate. It's not perverted or anything." My mother-in-law was panicking, stumbling over her words as tears welled up in her eyes. She was on the verge of breaking down. I'll admit, I felt a bit of satisfaction watching her unravel. After all the times she tormented me, I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. She deserved this. She began making pathetic excuses, her explanations jumbled and incoherent as she tried desperately to defend herself. Then, suddenly, my father pulled another item from his pocket, a photograph. It showed my mother-in-law with the same man, engaged in an explicit act, in broad daylight, somewhere secluded. My father looked her in the eye. "You wouldn't have seen these, had you not been so cruel to my dear Mary. Why do you have that picture?" "Because I'm a detective, remember?" my father replied. "Oh, do you recall now?" I'd been telling her all along that my father was a detective, which explained why he had such a photograph. Coincidentally, the wife of the married man in the picture had hired him to investigate an affair. "It turns out the wife of this man hired me to investigate her husband's affair," my father explained. "I was surprised to discover you were the other woman. I was going to inform her next week, but I didn't expect to have to show you this so soon." "Huh? No, I'm innocent. I was just forced into an unpleasant situation. I am not at fault. Please, don't tell his wife," she pleaded. "Oh, it was against your will, was it? You seem to be enjoying yourself." We also have video footage of you whispering sweet words to the man. Do you want to see it? I'm sorry, she stammered. My mother-in-law collapsed to her knees and burst into tears. I watched her pitiful display with a cold glare. Sensing the tension, my husband arrived. I'd run out of patience with him, too, and proposed a divorce. I've had enough. I want to end this. Let's get divorced. What? He said, looking shocked. I'll go crazy if I stay in this horrible family any longer, so, I'm leaving. Hold on, what will happen to our living expenses if you leave? Huh? What do you mean? I was fired a while ago, he admitted. He dropped the bombshell that he'd lost his job at the end of the year. I was taken aback. He hadn't told me anything, knowing he'd been fired. He still decided to go on the spa resort trip. What a fool. I felt I had no choice but to divorce him. I took off my wedding ring and left it there. Desperately, he tried to stop me. Wait, can't you forgive me for not taking you on the spa resort trip? It's not just about the trip. I don't want to be with you or your mother anymore. If you want to live with your mother that much, then go ahead, you mama's boy. Please, wait, don't go. I hired a lawyer and proceeded with the divorce. My ex-husband seems to be struggling with his finances now that I'm gone. I thought he should find a new job quickly, but since he was fired for theft, he'll likely struggle to find one. Apparently, his previous employer dismissed him because he was caught stealing. They decided they couldn't trust him and didn't want someone like that on their team. Unsurprisingly, the wife of my mother-in-law's lover demanded compensation for the affair. My mother-in-law ended up spending all the money left by my father-in-law to settle the payment. I haven't seen my ex-husband or ex-mother-in-law since, but I imagine they're living a difficult life. It doesn't matter to me anymore. Currently, I'm living alone and enjoying my work. I'm glad I decided not to have a child with my ex-husband. Now, I'm enjoying a peaceful life, and I'd be happy to find a new love if the opportunity arises. My plan is to make sure I choose wisely this time.
I find myself in a predicament, entangled in a web of familial expectations and financial disputes within my marriage. The notion of inheriting my rightful share seems to be slipping away, overshadowed by the relentless pursuit of wealth by my husband and mother-in-law. In the realm of matrimony, one would assume that an inheritance is a natural entitlement. Yet in my case, it appears to be an elusive right, as both my husband and mother-in-law exhibit an unwavering fixation on money. Their covetous tendencies extend beyond mere possession, venturing into the audacious territory of claiming my late father's hard-earned legacy as their own. The audacity of surrendering my father's amassed wealth to these individuals is inconceivable. Unforgivable, in fact. My resolve strengthens with each passing day, and I am determined not to succumb to their voracious desires. Allow me to introduce myself. S, a 44-year-old navigating the complexities of a 20-year-old marriage. Amidst the delicate balancing act of household responsibilities and a demanding job, my husband John, aged 46, toils away at a supermarket near the station. Our paths crossed during my university years, a chance encounter at the very supermarket where I held a part-time job. Casual dating evolved into marriage at the age of 24, and our union now includes our son, Bill, who recently embarked on his journey into university life this spring. The fabric of my life is woven with fulfilling responsibilities, but a disquieting undercurrent persists: my husband's reckless spending habits. While the right to spend our hard-earned money is undeniable, his unrelenting demands for additional funds, accompanied by a lack of transparency, only serve to exacerbate the situation. In the presence of my husband and his parents, financial matters become a battleground. My resistance to their insatiable demands is met with vehement opposition, and the atmosphere becomes charged with tension. My son, Bill, thankfully, shares my sentiments towards his grandparents and ensures his absence whenever they make an appearance. However, a startling revelation from Bill unveils a new layer of turmoil. The revelation of my husband's infidelity, witnessed firsthand by our son, leaves me more disheartened than angry. Bill, advocating for a divorce, echoes my sentiments. Though reassured by my son's support, I decide to confront my husband before taking any drastic steps. As I prepare to address the issue, an unexpected intrusion occurs. My husband and his parents barge into our living room. Seemingly innocuous, their visit takes a turn when my husband proposes an extravagant trip to Hawaii, accompanied by a demand for a substantial sum of $5,000. Frustration reaches its peak, prompting me to confront them not only about their financial expectations, but also about my husband's infidelity. The room falls silent, and I brace myself for the repercussions of this revelation. Prepared to confront my husband as planned, I confronted him about the allegations of infidelity. His initial response was one of denial and confusion, questioning the need for proof and asserting his innocence. I pointed out that someone had witnessed him entering a hotel with another woman, to which he responded by challenging the credibility of the observer. Frustrated, I hesitated, not wanting my anger to be directed at our son, Bill, who had shared the unsettling revelation. Astonishingly, my mother-in-law dismissed the seriousness of the accusation, suggesting that forgiving a cheat or two is normal for men. I found it incredulous that a woman herself could condone such behavior. However, the urgency shifted to their demand for money for a Hawaii trip, a distraction my husband readily embraced, leaving the matter of his infidelity unresolved. Exasperated with these constant financial disputes and moral insensitivity, I decided that it was time to sever ties. Calmly, I announced that we were getting a divorce. In response, my husband threatened to claim my parents' mansion as part of the property division if the separation proceeded. As tensions escalated during our argument, my cell phone rang, interrupting the heated exchange. It was my uncle, my father's brother, bearing unsettling news. My father had collapsed, lost consciousness, and was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. Urgently summoned to the hospital, I explained the situation to my husband and his parents before departing. Upon arriving at the hospital, I discovered that my father was stable but not in optimal condition. My father, age 67, had dedicated his life to the family business, overcoming initial challenges to provide a comfortable life for us. The news of his sudden health crisis left me emotionally shaken, prompting me to reflect on his irreplaceable role in my life. Days later, my father regained consciousness, alleviating some concerns. Visiting him with Bill, we shared a moment of relief and concern. However, the doctor's subsequent call revealed the severity of my father's condition, exacerbated by years of overwork. In the following days, my father passed away, and grief enveloped me. Throughout this difficult time, Bill remained a steadfast source of support. As an only child, I shouldered the responsibility of funeral preparations, and my husband's indifference only heightened my emotional burden. At the funeral, my in-laws made an appearance, expressing admiration for the family home and insensitive curiosity about its value. In the aftermath of the memorial services, while attempting to come to terms with my father's passing, my in-laws, father-in-law, and mother-in-law made a sudden visit. Their focus, however, remained on the materialistic aspects, with my mother-in-law fixating on the grandeur of the house and my father-in-law probing into its potential value. Their departure, seemingly content with their financial inquiries, left me speechless. As I began to cope with the grieving process and put away funeral clothes at home, a new wave of confusion emerged. My parents were on their way over, and I was left wondering about the purpose of their unexpected visit. My initial apprehension deepened as I awaited the arrival of my parents, anticipating another discussion veering towards financial matters. In a solemn attempt to understand their motives, I resolved to engage in conversation upon their arrival. As they entered, my in-laws wore satisfied grins, taking their places on the sofa. The atmosphere tensed when my husband abruptly suggested we move from our spacious house, proposing that his parents join us in our new abode. Baffled by this sudden proposition, I reiterated my intention to proceed with the divorce, a decision fueled by my commitment to address my late father's affairs. However, my husband, dismissing the notion of infidelity and divorce, casually declared his intent to share everything between spouses. This included the inheritance, a claim he justified as his right as a husband. Their audacious assumption that all the inheritance belonged to them infuriated me, and their whimsical discussions about room preferences in a new mansion only fueled my frustration. Determined to thwart their plans and protect the legacy my father had worked hard to build, I vowed never to let them have their way. The audacity of my husband and his parents, treating my father's house and wealth as if it were rightfully theirs, had pushed my patience beyond its limits. A few days later, a call from my uncle brought a brief respite. His words of comfort and support reassured me that I had done well amidst the challenges. However, the conversation took an unexpected turn when my uncle expressed a pressing need to meet and share crucial information. Intrigued and apprehensive, I agreed to meet him that night. As my uncle disclosed shocking revelations about my husband and in-laws, I found myself grappling with the gravity of the situation. Determined to seek guidance, I confided in my uncle, sharing the preposterous demands and claims made by my husband and in-laws. My uncle, furious at their audacity, assured me that he would handle the situation. Intrigued by my uncle's plan, I eagerly met with him again the following day, this time accompanied by Bill. The plan unfolded, aiming to enlighten Bill about his father and grandparents and prepare him for the challenging road ahead. Braced for the confrontation, I summoned my in-laws to our house, bringing together the 6 of us, my husband, Bill, and the 3 of them. The discussion centered around the prospect of all 6 of us living in my family home. The proposal caught them off guard, and after confirming their seriousness, my mother-in-law enthusiastically endorsed the idea, expressing eagerness to live in what she deemed a dreamlike mansion. The elation, however, was short-lived. Reality struck when my father-in-law reminded us of the cancellation fee for their previously planned trip, insisting on reimbursement. Appalled by their audacious demands, I realized the depth of their selfishness. Unfazed, my mother-in-law reassured us that they would recoup the money soon enough, dismissing the urgency of the situation. Accustomed to my husband and in-laws' relentless pursuit of money, I had grown somewhat immune to their schemes. However, Bill, unaccustomed to their blatant money-grabbing tendencies, appeared visibly upset and angered by their audacity. In an attempt to soothe him, I gently patted Bill's shoulder, assuring him that we would handle the situation. As the conversation revolved around their proposed move into my family home, I decided to play along, knowing well that their assumptions were far from reality. John, my husband, questioned the logistics of the move, displaying an unusual sharpness in his tone. Attempting to deflect the tension, I explained that Bill and I would go ahead to prepare the house, emphasizing that it was a considerable task requiring early action. However, John's skepticism lingered, and he questioned Bill's ability to handle household tasks, especially since he was still a student. I managed to navigate the conversation by suggesting that Bill could manage his responsibilities, though John continued to resist over trivial matters. Despite his resistance, my mother-in-law remained in good spirits, seemingly oblivious to the underlying tension. The conversation inadvertently shifted towards the size of the mansion and the number of rooms, with my mother-in-law expressing excitement. Seizing the opportunity, I assured them that they could choose their rooms first and even proposed a gradual process of tidying up, considering my work schedule. My calculated responses allowed me to temporarily deflect their expectations, leaving them satisfied with their perceived victory. In my mind, I harbored a plan to undermine their assumptions and bring them down from their lofty expectations. The moving day was set a month later, and I eagerly anticipated the final showdown. On the decisive day, my husband and in-laws arrived with a moving truck, expecting to take possession of what they believed to be their new home. Bill and I awaited them in front of the entrance. Ignoring my husband's attempt at humor, I observed the sparkles of excitement in my in-laws' eyes. Little did they know that the impending revelation would shatter their illusions. As my husband made light of the situation, the gate opened, and my uncle, my father's brother, emerged from the house. Silent and imposing, my uncle confronted them, leaving my husband and in-laws puzzled. It became evident that my husband barely remembered my uncle from the funeral. Setting the record straight, my uncle asserted his ownership of the house and clarified the inheritance distribution. The shock on my husband and in-laws' faces grew as they realized the gravity of their misconceptions. Despite my uncle's assertive explanation, my husband remained calm, seemingly attempting to move past the confrontation. In a sudden turn of events, Bill intervened, accusing his father of infidelity. The revelation left my husband shocked and exposed, unable to hide from the truth his son had uncovered. Observing my father entering a hotel with another woman confirmed my suspicions of his infidelity. However, when confronted, he adamantly denied the accusations, refusing to admit to his transgressions. In response, Bill, my son, urged his father to leave our lives, emphasizing the impact of his actions on our family. Despite this plea, my in-laws remained fixated on financial gains, insisting on a proper property division if a divorce were to proceed. My in-laws boldly declared that they had relinquished their apartment and quit their jobs to partake in a life of leisure in the assumed family mansion. Their presumptuous demands left me astounded, especially when they revealed that both my husband and father-in-law had quit their jobs. I questioned their rationale, bewildered by their abrupt decisions and the apparent reliance on my father's inheritance. In response to their audacious claims, I asserted my rightful inheritance as my father's child, anticipating a substantial property division. To my relief, my uncle, a lawyer, intervened to handle the legal proceedings. He exposed my husband's infidelity, supported by evidence gathered during a month-long investigation. The revelation left my husband and in-laws stunned, and they finally began to comprehend the severity of the situation. With my uncle's guidance, I firmly informed them to handle all matters through legal channels and requested they never show their faces to me again. Despite a momentary glare from my husband, they left, and I expressed my gratitude to my uncle for his invaluable support. Following the legal proceedings, Bill and I moved into the family home, fulfilling my father's and grandfather's wishes. Grateful for the opportunity to live in a house filled with memories, I thanked my uncle for the life-changing experience. Bill, having learned from his uncle's guidance, dedicated himself to his studies, aspiring to become a successful lawyer. My ex-husband and his parents found themselves in a challenging situation, residing in an old apartment and struggling to secure new employment. The consequences of their actions began to unravel as my ex-husband reached out for financial assistance. However, having severed all ties, I refused to lend him money, enforcing the newfound estrangement. In the aftermath, my ex-husband's life took an unexpected turn. He resorted to part-time and day jobs, attempting to navigate the consequences of his choices. Their elaborate plan to borrow money for a non-existent luxury trip further exposed the depths of their deception. Grateful for the weight lifted off my shoulders, I focused on my career, with the immediate goal of witnessing Bill successfully graduate from college. Hello, I am a single woman in my 60s. Since childhood, I held on to the belief in a reciprocal philosophy, thinking that my hard work and dedication would be met with equal effort in return. This mindset extended to my relationships, where I believed treating others kindly would result in receiving kindness in return. Even after marriage, I continued to hold this belief, assuming that by being considerate to my husband, he would reciprocate. In today's world, women aren't expected to sacrifice as much. But during my era, societal expectations were different. I willingly made sacrifices for my husband and children, confident that my efforts would contribute to future happiness. However, my marriage and family life didn't unfold as expected. Despite my early mornings and diligent work for the family, complaints and mistakes overshadowed appreciation. At that time, no one mandated that I live this way. I was an ordinary person who married a coworker 4 years my senior due to societal expectations. Despite the societal norms for married women to quit their jobs, I became a full-time housewife after giving birth to my daughter. I had no regrets. I believed it was a natural course of action for family life. Though my life wasn't glamorous like TV dramas, it felt easy and stable. Around my daughter's 9th grade, tragedy struck when my mother passed away suddenly from a heart attack. While mourning her loss, I discovered my husband's affair. In the midst of my grief, he found joy elsewhere, becoming uncaring and eventually demanding a divorce. Despite my determination to avoid divorce, my husband's behavior became unbearable. Divorce wasn't as socially acceptable back then, and despite an irresponsible and unkind husband, I resisted the idea. Looking back, I realized my naivety, but more was at stake. My daughter, witnessing the turmoil, felt the impact. Despite my refusal to divorce, I found myself in a deeply miserable situation. During a heated argument about our impending divorce, my father unexpectedly visited. Witnessing the distress in our relationship, he offered me a place to live and encouraged me to leave my husband, taking my daughter with me. Having recently lost his wife and observed his daughter in an unhappy marriage, my father convinced me that persisting in such a difficult situation was futile. Feeling the weight of his concern, I yielded to my husband's request for a divorce. In return, my husband provided me with $3,000 in cash. With my father's support, I secured a 2-bedroom townhouse to live in with my daughter, starting anew. I anticipated the need to work hard to support my daughter, fearing judgment from society for being a divorced woman with a daughter. This concern was particularly heightened as my daughter entered adolescence. During this challenging period, my daughter expressed typical desires of her age, lamenting the perceived consequences of her parents' divorce. Despite the emotional hurt, I knew I couldn't dwell on them forever, determined to provide for my daughter. I embarked on the journey of seeking stable employment. However, being an older divorced woman with a child made securing a job challenging. Undeterred, I took on multiple part-time and nighttime jobs, even engaging in freelance work at home whenever possible. As time passed, my daughter advanced to her senior year of high school. Despite financial constraints, she excelled academically, finding her own way to thrive. Motivated by my desire to ensure her future, I secured a job at a 24-hour restaurant, working 12-hour shifts. 2/3 of my earnings were diligently saved for her college tuition. Despite facing judgment and gossip, especially from some married men who viewed me as an easy target, I persevered for the sake of my daughter. The sacrifices were numerous, but my goal was to provide her with opportunities I never had. As she approached adulthood, I hoped she would understand the struggles I faced in raising her and making a living. Reflecting on these challenges, I realized that having a daughter made my situation both more arduous and meaningful. She became my anchor, giving me the strength to endure and persevere through life's challenges. I held on to the belief that, in the future, my grown daughter and I would share stories about the hardships we faced and take pride in our resilience. A year later, my daughter's outstanding performance in the SAT exams earned her admission to Harvard University, a moment of immense joy that made all the previous struggles worthwhile. As she embarked on her college journey, I felt a mix of pride and emptiness. Though I had managed to provide for her education and housing, the absence of her daily presence at home left a void. We maintained close contact through phone calls, and during the initial months of her independence, our bond deepened. Her newfound affection and connection were a source of comfort, and I cherished our evolving relationship. Despite the challenges, my daughter graduated from college without financial setbacks, fulfilling a dream we had worked hard to achieve. Anticipating that we could live together again, I was surprised when she secured a job at a defense corporation and chose to live independently. To support her, I took a bank loan and contributed to the down payment for a condo near her workplace. While I aged and embraced a more unassuming appearance, my daughter thrived as a fashionable career woman. Witnessing her success brought immense happiness, reinforcing the idea that my sacrifices had borne fruit. I found contentment in her achievements, understanding the sentiment of people who say they forget hunger in moments of joy. Despite the financial support throughout her college years, the prospect of her wedding became a new financial responsibility. People questioned why I continued to struggle when my daughter was capable of self-sufficiency. However, I was determined to contribute to her wedding expenses to prevent any condescension from her future in-laws. The belief that sacrificing for her happiness would bring joy to both of us fueled my resilience. On the other hand, as my daughter dated, I noticed a growing distance between us. Initially hurt, I recognized that her adult life and relationships rightfully took precedence. I patiently waited for her to mature and open up to me, understanding that priorities shift during this phase of life. However, on her 27th birthday, I looked forward to celebrating with her. Yet she made it clear that she had plans with someone named Michael and dismissed any preparations. While she may have intended to convey that I needn't go to any trouble, I couldn't help but feel hurt. It was her birthday, a day that held immense significance for me as the day she was born, and her apparent indifference stung deeply. It was challenging to comprehend why my daughter considered spending money on her birthday a waste, given the tight budget. Despite her intelligence, her understanding of her own mother seemed distant. Despite my hurt feelings, I understood she was my only daughter, and I wanted to see her briefly on her birthday, even if it meant taking a day off work. On that day, I meticulously paid attention to my appearance before going to her workplace. However, what awaited me was an unexpected and emotionally charged encounter in the company lobby. I saw my ex-husband with his mistress, individuals I never wished to see again. Doubting how he found out and came there, I frantically called my daughter, only to be abruptly hung up on as she claimed to be busy with a meeting. Feeling dumbfounded, I turned around, only to hear my daughter happily calling her dad and embracing him with a bright smile. Her boyfriend seemed familiar with my ex-husband and his wife, adding to my fury. In that moment, I felt betrayed, as if the whole world conspired against me. Drained of meaning, I hastily left the scene. Reflecting on that day, I felt the desire to confront my daughter and ex-husband, but an overwhelming urge to escape prevailed. Despite my inner turmoil, I couldn't muster the courage to call my daughter. Unexpectedly, my daughter showed up at home one day, announcing her decision to get married and handing me an invitation card. The surprise turned into shock when I saw the names on the card. Although she was my daughter, I felt an intense urge to throw her out of the house. I questioned how she, my own daughter, could present such an invitation. I confronted her, expressing my hurt at being treated like a guest at her wedding, emphasizing my role as her mother. In response, my daughter apologized, stating she felt she had no choice. Despite her desire to marry Michael, she faced scrutiny from his parents over every detail about her. The situation left me grappling with complex emotions, torn between hurt and the desire to understand my daughter's perspective on her life-changing decision. The revelation from my daughter about her concerns regarding my divorced past and the challenges of being a single mother struck me deeply. She explained that revealing this truth could jeopardize her chances of marrying her boyfriend, as her potential in-laws might disapprove. In the face of this revelation, I couldn't help but express my frustration, reminding her of the sacrifices and struggles I endured to raise her, work at a restaurant, and fund her education. My daughter's response. However, her response stunned me. She dismissed the past, stating that her father and his new partner, the woman who played a role in breaking our family, had already met with her future in-laws. In her perspective, the present was what mattered most, and she prioritized her desire for a comfortable life over the difficulties we faced before. Feeling hurt and regretful, I spoke harshly to her for the first time in my life, expressing my disappointment in her attitude. In turn, she suggested that if I wanted to drop her from my life, I should repay her for the money I spent raising her. This exchange led to a heated argument, and she left my house in anger, proclaiming that we were now strangers. Devastated by the turn of events, I questioned the purpose of saving money for her wedding and felt a deep sadness when I looked at the wedding invitation she had left behind, with a different name printed where mine should have been. 3 years later, I received news that my father, who had been living independently to avoid burdening me, had fallen ill. Sadly, I learned about his condition only after his passing. The realization of being a poor daughter to him hit me hard. A few months later, I inherited a small condo where he had lived, a bittersweet reminder of the family ties and struggles that shaped my life. Upon realizing that I had money saved from my daughter's wedding in the savings account, I decided it was time to live for myself, even if it seemed somewhat late in life. I pondered the idea that in today's world, trusting only one child and sacrificing for them might not be the most fulfilling path. It was a realization that I should prioritize my own desires and needs before it became too late for me to enjoy life. As I contemplated this shift in perspective, a real estate broker and close friend from the restaurant where I worked suggested that I consider what I truly wanted to do. Despite societal expectations for women to sacrifice, I felt the desire to break free from that mold and live for myself. I harbored a feeling of regret and sorrow for the sacrifices I made over the years, and I yearned to pursue personal fulfillment. Inspired by my friend, I embarked on studying the real estate business and even delved into auction biddings. With some savings and money from selling my late father's condo, I seized the opportunity to take on a new challenge. In the surprising turn of events, I became a building owner overnight, residing in a prime location. 6 months later, after returning from a mountain climbing adventure, I found myself on the top floor of my building, now transformed into my home. Unexpectedly, someone knocked on my door, and I debated whether to pretend not to be home due to fatigue. However, curiosity prevailed, and I opened the door to find my pregnant daughter with a chubby-cheeked toddler in her arms. Tearful and distressed, she explained that she had been deceived by her husband, who turned violent and had affairs. Faced with impending childbirth and raising her young daughter, she sought refuge with me, despite my initial shock and the lingering hurt from our previous arguments. I couldn't turn my back on my daughter in need. She revealed that she had heard about my newfound success in real estate and wanted assistance. Despite the painful history between us, she pleaded for help, pointing out that she had a share in the money I had acquired from my wedding savings and inheritance. Caught between anger and compassion, I couldn't deny my daughter's plea for help. Despite her past actions, I recognized the vulnerability in her situation and knew that as a mother, I couldn't turn her away. The complexities of our relationship resurfaced, prompting me to grapple with the tangled emotions of love, disappointment, and the inevitability of family ties. I confronted her, saying, "I was the one who saved money for your education and your wedding, but you told me to get out of your life. Do I need to give you money now?" I only said that, but I didn't get any money back from you. It seems that in front of money, there is no use for the bond between a parent and a child. Now that you have money, you don't need a daughter, right? No matter what, I am still your daughter, so I have a right to your money too. I was once very proud of you, thinking that it was because of me that you were able to attend Harvard. But now I see that it was all in vain. I guess I was too busy making a living that I couldn't teach you to be a decent human being. I raised you as someone who is so selfish and can only think of yourself. I don't plan to give you one penny, so you can either go back to your husband or your wonderful father. You are too mean. Could you abandon your own daughter? Do you think other people would care for me at all? That wife already ran off with the money, and he has disappeared trying to look for her. If you abandon me, I'll become an orphan. Now I have a child and I'm pregnant, so how could you be so mean to me? Would you be happy if I died like that? When she screamed at me, I couldn't put up with her any longer, so I took out all the money I had in my wallet and threw it at her. Since you are acting so pathetic, I'll give you that. However, never come back to my house because I won't let you in. There's something that I learned in the meantime, just that your life is important. Now my life is important. You cannot put me in and out of your life at your whim. I coldly let my daughter and her child out of my house. Of course, I would not feel good about it since she was my daughter after all. However, I couldn't accept her because she still was as selfish as before, and I couldn't bury the past. However, I felt sorry for my little granddaughter, who was innocent and got kicked out together with her mom. After that, my daughter was too proud and never came to see me again. To be honest, I knew that she was such a daughter. So, has she repented for her past acts and begged me for forgiveness out of a quest? Pretending I was reluctant, but would have found ways to punish her wayward husband. But I was so disappointed that if she erased me from her life to marry her husband, she should have lived happily. Why did my husband and my daughter turn out that way, even though I lived a hard life? Now I see that the only person who is living a life the way I want to is only me alone. Thus, if anyone is living a life like I did on behalf of others, I want to say this one thing for sure. No matter how strong your relationship is with another person, be sure to take care of your life first. Even if everyone in this world betrays you, you will not betray yourself. In the end, happiness is not what you do for others, but what you do for yourself. I want to give that message through my story here. Even though it may seem like a life that's only felt half, I plan to try to fill that remaining half from now on for complete happiness. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope all goes well for you today, and good fortune will be with you. Please cheer for me and write your comments of wisdom in the comment section. Pressing like and subscribing is a big help to me. Have a wonderful day, everyone. At my mother's funeral, my mother-in-law wore a grin as she declared, "This house will be inherited by my son." Contemplating which room to take, she remarked, "I wonder if I should choose this one." Politely, I corrected her, stating, "Actually, I'm the one inheriting this house." Unfazed, she retorted, "I know, but isn't it true that a wife's belongings belong to her husband? So, in essence, this house belongs to my son, right?" I sighed, questioning the validity of her claim. Cheerfully, she added, "From now on, let's get along." Hesitating, I asked, "What do you mean by get along?" She declared, "Turning this room into my room." I inquired, "Does that mean we'll be living together?" Confidently, she replied, "Exactly." With such a splendid house, it'd be a waste to have empty rooms when two people can live here, don't you think? Despite my recent loss, my mother-in-law seemed blissfully unaware of my grief. Why would she bring this up now? Can't she see the sadness on my face? It's no time for jokes. This house holds precious memories, built by my respected father and cherished by my late mother. I don't want my unreasonable mother-in-law to live here, and my husband, who doesn't stop at it, is equally at fault. To prevent my precious home from being tainted, I decided to take the initiative before moving out. I am a 42-year-old office worker, having missed the timing for marriage and still being single after turning 40. I had given up on the idea of getting married. However, through an acquaintance's introduction, I met Michael, who is 4 years younger than me, and we were able to get married. My husband is a kind person who prioritizes my opinions. Where should we go for our honeymoon? You mentioned that Europe would be nice, right? I asked. But didn't you say you preferred the Maldives? Let's go to the Maldives. My husband replied. My mom wants to live with us. My dad's health isn't great, and it seems my mom is finding it challenging to manage alone, he explained. I understand that your mom is going through a tough time, but didn't we agree not to live together before we got married? I questioned. You're right. I'll talk to my mom about it. My husband always listens to my whims, and I often feel guilty about it. Meeting a good person is a joy, but there's one regret. My father passed away 3 years before I got married, so I couldn't show him my wedding and reassure him. My father was a strict executive at a small and medium enterprise, and I deeply respected him. Despite the modest size of the company, his income was decent, and our family home was sizable enough to hold a funeral. As I began working as an office employee, I gained a deeper understanding of the challenges of work, which only increased my admiration for my father. And then 2 years after our marriage, when mother also passed away, even my mom, my husband asked, "Are you okay? Shouldn't you take a break in the back room?" Funerals are generally less commonly held at home, but my mother's funeral was conducted at home. During my mother's funeral, he always looked out for me. Truly, I was fortunate to have met such a good husband. That's when my mother-in-law, Nancy, arrived. My deepest condolences. I sincerely sympathize with you, I replied. Thank you. I hadn't lived together with my mother-in-law, and our interactions had been limited, maintaining a reasonable distance. However, it was during my mother's funeral that I glimpsed her true nature. Following the funeral, my mother-in-law approached me. While it was not uncommon for her to seek me out, her expression carried an oddly gleeful tone. We greatly appreciate your assistance during this funeral. Thanks to you, we were able to smoothly complete the ceremony, she expressed appreciatively. Then, abruptly, she added, the funeral is over now. Isn't it enough with the formalities? I was taken aback, thinking she was initially trying to be considerate of my grief. But it soon became evident that wasn't the case. Commenting on the splendid house my parents had, I replied, wait a moment. Undeterred, she boldly walked into the depths of the house. I protested, oh Mom, this is inconvenient. Some areas are messy. Dismissing my concerns, she declared, don't fuss over details. More importantly, this house will be inherited by my son. I wonder if I should take this room. Hesitating, I tried to clarify. Mom, actually, I'm the one inheriting this house. Smirking, she responded, I know your parents didn't have any other children, right? And isn't a wife's belongings her husband's? So, in essence, this house belongs to my son, doesn't it? I sighed, questioning the validity of her claim. Cheerfully, she added, from now on, let's get along. My hesitation prompted her to confidently declare, I mean turning this room into my room. Concerned, I asked, does that mean we'll be living together? Without hesitation, she replied, exactly. I've decided with such a splendid house, it'd be a waste to have empty rooms when two people can live here. Finally, I won't have to take care of my husband all by myself. Unfortunately, my mother had recently passed away, and yet my mother-in-law was making such statements. I became increasingly angered, wondering why she would joke around at a time like this. Just as my conversation with my mother-in-law seemed to catch my husband's attention, he intervened. Mom, what are you saying? This isn't the right time for such discussions, he scolded. Undeterred, my mother-in-law retorted, why make such a fuss? Firmly, my husband insisted, just leave. He escorted her out of the house, apologizing, sorry, my mom can be unreasonable. Grateful for my dependable husband, I replied, it's fine. Thanks to you for handling it. Yet, in the days that followed, I would come to realize that my husband's perspective on scolding my mother-in-law was subtly different from my own. 10 days after my mother's funeral, as things settled down a bit, we decided to discuss the fate of my family home. Unexpectedly, my husband made a proposal. This apartment is cramped. Shouldn't we move back to my parents' house? I suggested. Agreeing, he added, yeah, you're right. With more belongings and the possibility of having kids, it's better than squeezing into this tiny apartment. Then, hesitantly, he concluded, well then, we should start preparing for the move. I had a pressing matter to discuss about the move. What's the matter? I inquired. He hesitated before revealing. Considering the spacious house and all the empty rooms, I thought maybe my parents could move in with us. Stunned, I questioned, are you suggesting we live together? Recently, I've noticed a change in my husband. Despite thinking he prioritized my opinions, I now wonder if he's merely a yes man or even a pushover. His compliance with my mother-in-law's requests and his suggestion of living together make me question his true stance. Despite my repeated objections to cohabitation, he persists, seemingly prioritizing her over me. Haven't I said it repeatedly? We won't live together, I remind him. He responds, but Mom keeps insisting on it. I counter, during the funeral, you scolded her, didn't you? You stood up for me and opposed cohabitation. He admits, yes, I was upset about her barging into the house. But that doesn't mean I'm entirely against living together. I just thought such an important decision shouldn't be made casually in that setting. It was decisive. Despite nodding in agreement with my stance, he seems more inclined towards my mother-in-law. Moreover, he avoids making definitive decisions, maintaining a certain distance, perhaps unconsciously believing he remains neutral. People like him can be tricky, convincing themselves of their neutrality and decision-making abilities. It's frustrating. I oppose living with someone who barged into my parents' house on the day of the funeral and suggested living in a particular room. I won't change my stance. Please convey this to your mom, I insist. He responds, "Why? You seem really bothered by it." Fine, I'll let her know. While I had mentally prepared for the possibility of living with my in-laws when we got married, witnessing my mother-in-law's behavior during my mother's funeral changed my perspective. Living together in the cherished home my father built is now unthinkable, especially considering my husband's lack of assertiveness. When he conveyed my opposition to cohabitation, my mother-in-law directly protested by calling me. "Why are you opposing cohabitation when there's such a spacious house? You're Michael's wife now, and his father and I are your parents, right? Why such strong opposition to living together with us?" I reiterated my decline for cohabitation, explaining my husband's mobility issues and the challenges I face alone. She accused me of abandoning them, prompting me to remind her of the reasons my husband had shared. Despite feeling sorry for my father-in-law's health, I can't ignore the possibility of everything related to him being pushed onto me if we were to live together. If we consider cohabitation a significant improvement in my husband and mother-in-law's mindset is a non-negotiable requirement. A few days after my mother-in-law labeled me heartless, my husband surprised me by rearranging the living room, moving furniture around to create space. Intrigued, I asked, "What are you doing? Is this for storing moving boxes?" He responded, "No. I'm planning to make space for 2 beds here." The mention of 2 beds filled me with dread, and cautiously, I asked, "Are your parents coming to stay?" To my dismay, he replied, "No, they're moving in today, even before the actual move." The realization hit me despite my objections. My husband and mother-in-law were forcing cohabitation upon me. Why is this happening? I questioned, feeling a growing sense of frustration. He explained their lease is up, so we decided they'd move here without renewing it. It'll be cramped for 4 people, but we're moving soon, right? Just bear with it for a little while. Distressed, I reiterated, "That's not what I meant. Why is cohabitation even on the table? I've said it before. I don't want to live with someone who barged into my parents' house on the day of the funeral and suggested living in this room. I'll make sure to talk to Mom." He responded, "We'll be living together from now on, so please get along." Annoyed, I questioned, "Why do you prioritize everything your mom says?" He clarified, "It's not about prioritizing her. I listened to both of your opinions and made a judgment." However, my husband, often a yes man when it came to my mother-in-law, seemed to have fallen for her cohabitation strategy. Unwittingly swayed by her, he believed he was making independent judgments. I used to see him as kind, but when paired with my mother-in-law, he became a handful, forcing me into cohabitation with my in-laws. As we welcomed my in-laws into our cramped apartment, my mother-in-law began complaining about the living conditions. Apologizing for the sudden addition of 2 elderly people, I assured them we would endure until the move. However, my father-in-law, Tony, seemed polite, and it appeared he wouldn't be problematic. But subtle signs indicated he was following my mother-in-law's lead, becoming another yes man. Days later, my mother-in-law requested an errand to buy a medicated patch. Frustrated, I wondered why she made decisions without involving me in the conversation. Minor as it was, it raised concerns about potential future impositions. Living together seemed unsustainable. With my in-laws preparing for their move to my parents' home, I decided to take preemptive action. As my mother-in-law expressed excitement about moving to the spacious house, I initiated behind-the-scenes preparations determined to protect my parents' home. After about 10 uneventful days, I revealed my decision to renounce my inheritance. Handing over the official court approval, I explained, That house holds immense sentimental value. I couldn't bear the thought of you living there, so I decided to let go of the house, preserving it as a beautiful memory in my heart. My mother-in-law scolded. What madness possessed you? Even if you were letting it go, you could have sold it for money. Why abandon the house? I calmly explained. Even if I sold it, you'd just rely on that money. Next, I thought it'd be clearer if I simply had nothing. She retorted. We moved out of our previous place for this move, you know. What are you doing? How will you make it up to us? Firmly, I stood my ground. I've consistently opposed cohabitation, yet without proper discussion, you forced it upon me. So I took a firm stance. Both my husband and mother-in-law seemed stunned upon learning about my renunciation of inheritance. Their faces drained of color, and they were left speechless, their strength sapped. My father-in-law looked bewildered as he observed the two of them. However, I wasn't about to let up. Michael, I continued, I've been thinking about getting a divorce. What do you think? My husband stammered, divorce. My mother-in-law chimed in, Michael, you should divorce this ridiculous wife immediately. I had expected her immediate demand for divorce, wanting to confirm whether my husband could make an independent decision at this critical moment. Mom, my husband mumbled. His response was still pending, but my resolve to proceed with the divorce had solidified. Fine, divorce is the only option, my mother-in-law snapped. My father-in-law interjected, Michael, it can't be helped. Your mom insists. Sighing, my husband said, well, you seem to want a divorce too, and maybe that's for the best. Even in significant decisions, my husband and father-in-law remained yes men to my mother-in-law, and now my husband's words made it sound as if he changed his opinion for my sake. Very well, I declared, let's proceed with the divorce. I'll be moving out with minimal belongings. I spent the night at a budget hotel. Urgent matters awaited the next day, so I took half a day off work and headed back to the courthouse. A few days later, my mother-in-law called me, demanding answers. What's going on? It seems that house is becoming yours. Why the sudden outburst? Did you find out through the estate division process? Yes, that house belongs to me. You forged documents and deceived us. I calmly refuted. Why would I forge documents meant for court submission? Those are genuine. Then why is the house becoming yours when you were supposed to renounce the inheritance? I explained. Well, right after that, I promptly withdrew the application. Renouncing an inheritance is difficult once accepted. However, it takes about a month for the renunciation application to be accepted, during which time it can be withdrawn at any point. The documents I showed my in-laws were not acceptance-related. They were from the application stage. I intentionally made them believe I had relinquished the house and confronted them with the prospect of divorce to gauge their reactions and decide my next steps. I didn't expect my mother-in-law's mindset to change, but I hoped my husband would reconsider and express that he didn't want a divorce. If he said he didn't want a divorce, I planned to rethink it and later explain about the house. However, so the house really becomes yours then, since it was acquired before the divorce. It's subject to property division, right? In such cases, you two are supposed to split the money from selling it, don't you? My mother-in-law seemed determined to extract whatever she could, recognizing the house wouldn't be hers. However, I had foreseen this. If that house were jointly acquired, it would indeed be considered shared property. However, it's a unique asset acquired through inheritance, exempt from property division. Unfortunately, specific assets like this aren't eligible for division. She persisted. What about the money that would come to Michael through property division? I calmly responded. We've only been married for a few years, so there's hardly anything substantial. Maybe just the car, although there's still an outstanding loan on it. Accusing me of selfishness, she called me heartless and declared, I'm protecting that house because it holds precious memories of my parents. I don't want people like you living there. If you have any further complaints, please go through a lawyer. After the call with my mother-in-law, the divorce proceedings progressed smoothly. Presumably, she urged my husband to expedite the divorce. Regardless, the divorce was finalized, and I was free from the burden of dealing with my in-laws. I felt a sense of relief, as if I had successfully shielded my father's home from harm. After I moved out, my former in-laws spent some time in the apartment where my ex-husband and I used to live. Despite one less person, the small space likely felt cramped. My former mother-in-law explored new housing options, but their age posed challenges in passing rental application screenings. Consequently, my ex-husband opted to rent a smaller single-family home for them. Although it's smaller, being a house, the rent is likely higher than the apartment. He also assumed the responsibility of supporting his parents. My ex-husband faces a challenging life ahead. Initially excited about moving into the large house my father left behind, my former mother-in-law now settles for a considerably smaller home, likely leaving her disappointed. As for me, I've embarked on a new chapter in the house my parents left me. It radiates warmth, as if my parents are still present. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time.
Emily sneered at me after I announced my resignation, and I responded by maintaining a silent, steady gaze. Our conversation had revolved around the company's decision to cut labor costs, with particular disdain aimed at those supposedly exploiting overtime pay. Tom, too, seemed to relish the notion of trimming expenses. A week later, my phone incessantly rang with calls from the company. Upon answering, the president inquired sharply, "Who exactly are you?" I couldn't help but scoff mockingly at the president's question. In response, I introduced myself as Lily Johnson, a 59-year-old employee with 37 years of dedicated service since my college graduation. I explained our company's role in providing administrative services, particularly catering to busy company presidents handling clerical work. Specializing in tax-related matters, I proudly managed 45 clients, a responsibility that had grown overwhelming despite the assistance of a part-timer. Despite the challenges, I couldn't show any sign of weakness. Our clients were long-standing relationships, and their adversities fueled my determination. Today, as I sat in front of my computer, the relentless harassment from Tom and Emily weighed heavily on my mind. Tom, 7 years my junior and now the head of the tax department, had drastically changed his demeanor 3 months ago upon promotion. His once polite tone was replaced with condescension and complaints, making every interaction a struggle. Even when I countered, he remained unfazed, instructing me to consult the manual for guidance and warning against unnecessary actions. Emily, Tom's assistant, joined in the harassment, criticizing my efficiency and mocking my rank and file status. Despite being the first to decline a promotion to department head, a fact unknown to Tom and Emily, I committed to completing my regular duties. Their harassment persisted, with Tom accusing me of increasing overtime, branding it a waste. Emily echoed his sentiment, sighing as she claimed my constant overtime was dragging down the entire tax department's performance. The recent cause of my overtime was Tom unexpectedly leaving a month's worth of client files on my desk to be filed by the end of the month after work. My face drained of color as I glanced at the files before me. "Wait, these all have deadlines this month, right?" I uttered in confusion. However, before I could grasp the gravity of the situation, Tom was already packing up his desk, completely uninterested in addressing my concerns. "I'm heading out. Take care with that," he casually remarked as he swiftly left the office, leaving me with a pile of urgent tasks. Emily followed suit, adding insult to injury with a mocking laugh. The incredulity of the situation weighed on me, and I sighed heavily as I opened the client files scattered on my desk. To my dismay, some of the files were originally Emily's responsibility. The realization deepened my sigh. I understood why Tom had been subjecting me to relentless harassment. They wanted me to retire quickly. My extensive experience and deeper knowledge in taxation made me a preferred resource for other members of the tax department over Tom. Tom's unapproachable demeanor and unattractive appearance made everyone, except Emily, avoid him. It seemed Emily's proximity to him was strategic, driven by Tom's preference for younger female employees. The shallow nature of their thinking sent a chill down my spine. Emily's harassment was not just a personal vendetta. She aimed to curry favor with Tom, the one evaluating the tax department's performance. Despite these challenges, I had to manage the declarations. Alongside preparing tax declarations for my assigned companies, it seemed today's workload was far from over. However, claiming overtime would only invite complaints from Tom and Emily, leaving me resigned to the prospect of unpaid extra hours. Then, unexpectedly, I received a summons to the president's office. Our company had recently undergone a change in leadership due to the former president's sudden illness. The new president, the former president's son, wasn't fully acquainted with our company. As I entered the office, I noticed Tom and Emily with unpleasant smirks on their faces. In a tense atmosphere, the president dropped a bombshell. "Lily, we'll need you to resign by the end of this month." My mind spun as I asked for clarification. Tom and Emily had apparently accused me of overbilling for overtime, citing that while others had around 15 hours, I had exceeded 80 hours. The president, oblivious to the true circumstances, seemed impressed with Tom and Emily's zero overtime. The reality of the situation hit me. The inflated overtime was a result of doing Tom and Emily's work. However, revealing Tom's instructions would risk portraying it as my own inability to manage time effectively. I presented the facts, asserting that I hadn't overbilled for overtime but struggled to finish my workload within regular hours. The president sighed deeply, expressing doubt but acknowledging the lack of evidence to pursue the matter further. Nevertheless, he insisted that they couldn't retain someone working at such a slow pace. Resigned to the situation, the president suggested my resignation, and it seemed his mind was made up. Told to leave the company I had devoted 37 years to, I felt a weariness settle in. Despite my dedication, the additional workload from Tom and Emily went unappreciated. I agreed to resign at the end of the month, acknowledging that I had already communicated my decision to the president. As I glanced at Tom and Emily, their vulgar smiles reflected satisfaction. Leaving the president's office, Emily taunted me with a sarcastic, "Thanks for quitting," her sneer cutting through. I responded with a silent stare, facing similar disdain from Tom, who shared his approval of cutting labor costs and labeled me as someone exploiting overtime pay. Observing their cheerful conversation, I pondered the handover process. Creating documents for all my clients, I ensured proper farewells and appointments with those I could meet personally. Unable to schedule a meeting with the president, I resorted to letters to inform them of my successor. A week post-resignation, enjoying a moment of relaxation at home, my mobile phone rang. Seeing the company's call, I hesitated, having already completed social insurance procedures. However, persistent calls from both the company and Tom and Emily's personal mobiles led me to answer reluctantly. As I picked up, the president urgently spoke, asking, "Who exactly are you?" I couldn't help but mockingly reply, "Just an unemployed lady who resigned from the company, nothing else." In response, the president urgently explained the chaos since my departure, 49 calls to stop transactions with the company. He pleaded for my immediate return, revealing a sense of panic in his tone. Reluctantly, I rose from my seat and made my way back to the company. Upon my arrival, I found Tom and Emily waiting, their faces notably pallid and dark circles underlining their weary eyes. Surprised by their drastic change in appearance, I inquired about what was happening. Tom glared at me and revealed, "Since you left, we've been bombarded with calls to stop transactions, not just from your clients but also from prospective companies we were planning to introduce." "What did you do?" Emily echoed the suspicion, expressing disillusionment at the thought of me resorting to underhanded tactics. Their haggard appearance suggested the toll handling cancellations. While I had not manipulated the clients, I had a hunch about the reason behind the transaction halts. Considering the inevitability of cancellations, I mumbled my thoughts aloud. Tom, however, accused me outright, insisting I had orchestrated something. He demanded I go to the president's office immediately, forcefully escorting me there. Upon entering the president's office with Tom and Emily, the president greeted me with a direct look in his eyes. Tom declared, "President, I brought her," with an air of authority, while Emily hurriedly followed suit. Ignoring their accusatory tone, the president questioned me about the abrupt halt in transactions after my departure. I took a deep breath and explained, "Our clients don't need us to manage their taxes. There are tax accounting firms that offer cheaper services. They continued with us because of me." Tom snapped back, questioning my self-worth, and Emily taunted me, both challenging my value to the company. Undeterred, I elaborated on my unique approach, offering tailored tax-saving strategies that resonated with our clients. Tom dismissed it as inefficient, arguing that their manual-based operations were more practical. The president sighed deeply, recognizing the fundamental difference in our approaches. In a serious tone, he said, "Actually," signaling a crucial revelation or decision to follow. I received a surprising call from my father, the former president. It turns out that some clients, who had stopped transactions, went directly to Dad to negotiate on my behalf. I hadn't anticipated clients going to such lengths for me. Dad emphasized that the tax department thrived because of my contributions. Not only did I manage my clients efficiently, but I also supported my colleagues' clients, possessing knowledge that even Tom couldn't match. Dad disclosed that if I hadn't declined the promotion, I would have held a higher position than a department head by now. The current president expressed regret with a pained expression. Emily appeared shocked, probably grappling with the idea that I could have been her superior. The president apologized for making me resign initially and asked if I would consider revoking my resignation. According to Dad, I was indispensable to the company. While I appreciated the change in the president's perspective, I hesitated to accept. Tom interrupted our conversation, visibly upset, and protested the president's decision, questioning why I was chosen over him. Emily echoed his sentiments, praising Tom's leadership and expressing disbelief at the preference for me. The president then sternly addressed them, revealing that since my resignation, numerous complaints had been received from the tax department, suggesting they had been shifting their workload onto others. Tom's face turned pale as the president exposed the fact that he had been pushing the preparation of client declaration forms onto subordinates, including Emily's work for multiple clients. The president pointed out the irony, considering Tom had accused me of being a salary thief. Observing Tom and Emily's pale expressions, the president continued by revealing an alleged leak about their romantic involvement. Tom struggled to defend himself, claiming he was merely mentoring Emily as her superior. However, the president produced receipts from the accounting department, indicating dining expenses filed by Tom. Confronted with evidence, Tom, sweating profusely, was unable to provide a convincing explanation. Emily, too, turned ghostly pale as the president accused them of neglecting their duties, inflating expense claims, and violating company policy by having an affair in the office while being married. In a calm and straightforward manner, the president declared the termination of their employment effective immediately. Tom and Emily tried to resist, promising to retract the receipt claims and pleading for their jobs. "I have a family," Tom desperately pleaded, attempting to reverse his termination. Emily echoed his sentiments, tearfully expressing her fear of being fired. She promised to apologize to me and others for burdening them with work, realizing the gravity of the situation involving neglect of duties and an affair with a supervisor. Concerned about her reputation, she implored for a second chance. Sensing their desperation, I offered advice. "Why don't you stop resisting? It's undignified," I suggested. Tom glared at me, retorting, "Shut up. What would a single person like you understand?" I sighed, reminding him, "Tom, you were the one who got me fired. It's just karma. What goes around comes around. Why don't you take some responsibility and reflect a bit?" Frustrated, Tom looked away, while Emily bit her lip in distress. Aware of more details about their misconduct, I turned to the president, asking with a smile if I should share them. Tom and Emily frantically tried to stop me, fearing further exposure. I issued an ultimatum, warning them that wrongdoings would eventually come to light, urging them to face reality before it worsened. At my words, both Tom and Emily collapsed to their knees, and the president decided to fire them on the spot. Later, I revealed more about their misdeeds, including Tom faking business trips to spend days with Emily and their insidious tactics of harassing disliked employees into quitting. Despite my attempts to help those employees, Tom and Emily's strategies were relentless. They repeatedly reprimanded and pressured employees out of my sight, often assigning sudden tasks with tight deadlines. The resigned employees had initially asked me to keep quiet, but since they were now happily working elsewhere, I decided it was time to speak up. The president, furious at my revelations, expressed anger about cutting Tom and Emily's final salary. He planned to thoroughly investigate past inflated expense claims. Tom, with tears in his eyes, begged the president not to cut his salary, fearing the impact on his family. As the truth unraveled, Tom's affair with Emily came to light, leading to Tom's divorce. The two now face claims for compensation in the divorce lawsuit, marking the consequential aftermath of their actions. I became aware of the situation when Tom reached out to me, seeking assistance in persuading the president to reconsider their firing. Emily and Tom found themselves in dire straits. Despite their efforts, they struggled to secure new jobs in the tax industry. The industry's close-knit nature meant that word of their misdeeds spread rapidly, making potential employers hesitant to hire them. Desperate for income to cover divorce compensation and living expenses, they resorted to day labor at construction sites, a stark departure from their previous office roles. Emily would often call me in tears, pleading for help. "Lily, please help. I only wanted a better life, and I never truly liked Tom," she'd cry. However, I couldn't ignore the fact that their predicament was a consequence of their own actions. Many, including myself, had been impacted by their behavior. I reminded Emily that the consequences were a result of her choices. "You can't unring a bell," I told her firmly. Facing hardships was the consequence of her decisions. Emily's despair echoed through her protests. Despite her regrets, the outcome remained unchanged. As for me, I chose to distance myself from the chaos of the corporate world. Despite the president's pleas for my return, I declined. Once told to resign, I had no desire to return. Instead, I found solace in assisting at a friend's tax office, supplementing my income and enjoying a more relaxed lifestyle. In the future, I entertained the idea of starting my own office, where I could serve my clients without the constraints of corporate bureaucracy. In my own space, I could fully dedicate myself to my clients' needs. As a tax accountant, I aspire to be on equal footing with my clients, providing service without superiority. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one filled with excitement and opportunities to pursue what truly mattered to me. My second life had just begun, and I eagerly anticipated the journey ahead.
You mean nothing to me anymore. Never set foot in this house again. My father's harsh words echoed in my ears, supported by John, my soon-to-be husband. I left my family home in tears right after graduating from high school. My name is Amy, and now, at 36, I am a farmer. It's been 18 years since I walked away from my family home. From this point on, the time I spend living my chosen life will surpass the time I spent in my family home. A thought that fills me with sentimentality. Our family home was in the city, with my father working in a corporate job and my mother as a stay-at-home mom. It was a family of 4, including my elder brother born a year ahead of me. My parents were the sort who made no secret of ranking their children, with my brother always receiving preferential treatment. The meals we had and the grandeur of our birthday gifts were consistently superior for him. He flaunted his supposed superiority and always belittled me. Loneliness and cries for attention punctuated my childhood, but my parents remained unyielding. I eventually gave up, and the turning point in my life came during the summer of my second year in high school. My brother, aiming for a top-tier university, was struggling with poor mock exam results. Frustrated, he vented his anger on me. My parents, treating him with utmost care as if he were a fragile object, piled household chores on me, leaving no time for my studies. Because I outperformed my brother academically, they attempted to lower my grades to boost his spirits. It made no sense. It was during this time that a teacher at my high school mentioned a rural experience program, a 2-night getaway immersion in country life. Students could stay at a host farm, harvest vegetables, and cook together. It was an opportunity to escape my toxic home environment, and I bravely signed up for it despite my father's objections. He had always dismissed agriculture as a career for those who couldn't secure corporate jobs, while my mother scoffed at me, questioning my sanity for willingly embracing manual labor and getting dirty in the mud. I defied my parents' opposition and used my saved pocket money to participate. It was the first time I'd ever gone against their wishes, and it turned out to be an excellent decision for me. Starved for familial love, it was a truly wonderful experience. Working in the fresh rural air was invigorating, and I discovered the warmth of a family. The eldest son of the host family, John, was a year older than me and the same age as my brother. At first, I was wary because of his age, but John was nothing like my brother. He was kind yet firm, got along well with his parents, and was equally kind to me. John's parents were genuinely gentle people. Though it was only 3 days, parting from the farm left me in tears, and John's mom cried alongside me, saying, "You're welcome back anytime." I promised that I would indeed return. Since they didn't use their cell phones much, I started writing them letters regularly. Before long, I began receiving replies from John, and it evolved into an exchange diary. We eventually started dating, a pure, long-distance relationship without even a kiss. As my brother failed to get into his first-choice university and ended up in a third-rate private college, I became a college applicant. However, my parents pressured me to get a job instead of pursuing higher education, claiming women didn't need an education. The real reason was likely their fear of me attending a better college than my brother. Since the rural experience, I had dreamed of becoming a farmer. While I could become a farmer without attending college, John was a college student who had moved to the city. Deciding to pursue a college education and aiming for a new form of farming with a clear goal in mind, I dedicated myself to daily studies despite interference from my parents and brother. Upon passing the university entrance exam, my father erupted in fury, questioning if I, as a woman, intended to attend a better university than my brother. My mother joined in, claiming they couldn't afford to support me because my brother needed the money. Devastated by their words and a massive argument, I chose to sever all ties with them. John, now my in-law's son, came to pick me up, and they generously supported my college expenses. 4 years later, I married John, never contacting my parents or brother during my college years. However, when my in-laws insisted we inform them about the marriage, my husband decided it was time to visit my childhood home for the first time in 4 years. The timing was chaotic during the planting season, so we could only make the visit at the beginning of summer. My husband, in-laws, and I arrived with sunburned and darkened faces from working outside. To our dismay, my parents and brother openly ridiculed us upon our arrival. My mother, in a condescending tone, questioned our financial status, stating, "No offense, but how old are you exactly? You must be quite poor to be working until you're all dark like this." Feeling mortified, I pleaded with her to stop, but she ignored me. My brother smirked and taunted, belittling those engaged in physical labor. I turned pale as the gentle smiles on my in-laws' faces froze. My husband firmly declared, "With all due respect, we are proud to be farmers." My father condescendingly laughed, disowning me at 18 and stating, "Just to make it clear, you're a stranger to us now. You're marrying a poor farmer who has to sweat and work hard. We're going to treat you as if you don't exist. It'll be a problem if you come asking us for money. We don't want to see you anymore." Already disowned at 18, I knew I was on my own, even without explicit confirmation. Despite this, I tried to maintain courtesies. The sympathetic looks from my in-laws and John were difficult to bear. On the way home, I quietly wept and resolved to forget about my biological family. Time passed, and 18 years flew by. The emotional wounds had thoroughly healed. I had given birth to 2 children, and my days were busy but fulfilling. Although I had virtually erased the memories of my parents and my brother, I was informed by a cousin that my brother was getting married. My cousin and I had always been close, occasionally meeting even after my marriage. At the wedding, my cousin said. However, I hadn't heard anything about the marriage plans of my parents or my brother. Well, since we're estranged, it's true that there's no way for me to know, I replied. I heard they are building a new duplex. I wonder if it's completed. Apparently, both my parents, my brother, and his wife plan to move after the wedding. My cousin knew about the estrangement between my parents and me, that they seemed to think that I would attend weddings and funerals. After finishing the phone call with my cousin, I impulsively dialed my mother's cell phone number. However, I was met with an automated message saying, "This number is no longer in use." I tried calling my father next, and again, the same automated message. Had they changed their cell phone numbers? I didn't know my brother's number, so I couldn't call him. With trembling fingers, I dialed the landline for my family home, and it connected. My heart was pounding as I waited for someone to pick up. "Hello," my brother answered. "Brother, it's Amy," I said, hesitating over what to say next. About to offer congratulations, my brother cut me off. "There's no need for you to do anything. You're a farmer or a stranger to me. Don't call me," he yelled, and hung up the phone. I rushed to call him back, only to find that I was already blocked. This was harsh. No matter how much he hated me, we were still family, and it hurt to be rejected like this. Seeing my distress, my husband was concerned and gently asked, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" I couldn't hold back my tears any longer, and when I told him about the conversation, both my husband and my in-laws were as furious as if it had happened to them. "Your home is here, Amy. Your family is with us," my mother-in-law reassured me. Her words moved me to tears, and I wished she was my real mom. She cared about me much more than my blood-related mother ever did. My father-in-law said, comforting me, "You're happy now. That's all that matters. No need to get hurt. The one who laughs is the winner," he added. My husband chimed in, saying, "Let's take them as a bad example and make sure we don't turn out like that, even for our children." Not knowing the situation, he hugged me tightly. "Thank you, everyone," I said, feeling warmth in my heart, realizing how happy I was now, even though I wasn't blessed with a supportive biological family. However, things took a drastic turn when my business was featured on national television. My in-laws, originally large-scale grain farmers in the American Midwest, who also grew a wide variety of vegetables and fruits, had a lot of produce that didn't meet the standards. I had studied food business in college and spent a lot of time figuring out how to sell all the produce without waste. Backed by the local farmers union, I started an online business selling jams, juices, and pickles made from slightly damaged fruits and vegetables that couldn't be sold as they were. My business was a huge success. It was a hit with moms who wanted to feed their children safe, domestically produced food, and seniors. The demand for nostalgic homemade pickles from those who cherished the taste of yesteryears led me to build a company. I collaborated with young women, like myself, who had married into farming families and unemployed individuals. Over time, it flourished into a $5 million business. Our success story garnered an in-depth report, and following the TV broadcast, we received a deluge of attention, orders, and inquiries. Amidst the constant ringing of both the company's phone and my personal smartphone, an unknown number caught my attention. Without much thought, I picked it up, only to discover it was my estranged brother. It appeared he had seen the national television feature on my success and wanted to borrow money to start a business. Swiftly and firmly, I rejected his request. Undeterred, my brother persistently screamed over the phone, urging me to stop arguing and give him the money, asserting that if a woman like me could start a business and make money, he was bound to be successful. The irony struck me. This was the same brother who had previously declared me a total stranger when I was just a simple farmer. Instead of responding to his pleas, I questioned him about why they hadn't informed me about the move. His surprising answer revealed that my brother's wife, a city girl, had influenced the decision to cut ties the moment my name was mentioned. An insight into her character led me to believe she shared the traits of my brother and parents. A few hours later, an unknown number called again, revealing itself as my father. He demanded an explanation for why I, a woman, was the boss and accused me of stealing a man's job. I clarified that both John and my father-in-law were integral to the farming business, and it was only natural. Though somewhat convinced, my father questioned why I hadn't contacted them. I reminded him that he had disowned me, promptly hanging up and blocking his number. Moments later, my mother called, demanding money, stating that I was making $500 million a year and should send funds home. I explained that the business generated $500 million in total revenue, after covering expenses and employee salaries, leaving little left over. My mother accused me of lying, showing no embarrassment in persistently demanding money. Firmly, I asserted that I wouldn't send money to strangers, whether I had it or not, then hung up and blocked her number. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was mistaken. My parents, my brother, and his wife, whom I had never seen before, showed up uninvited at my in-laws' house. My father announced, "Hey, Emmy, want to hear the surprise? I'm revoking the disownment." Their desperation for money was astounding. Even my mother-in-law couldn't hide her disbelief and asked, "What on earth is going on with you people?" The discomfort was evident, and my father-in-law and mother-in-law glared at my parents in silence. Even the employees had gathered, staring at my parents with astonishment. It was clear that my brother was not welcome either, but he retorted, "The real blood connections are us. We have the right to share the money you earn too." The woman who seemed to be my brother's wife nodded in agreement with his words. I was seething. I don't think so. Even though we share a blood connection, there was no emotional connection at all. You treated me like a stranger and abandoned me. The emotional scars from being abandoned by my biological family resurfaced, and I was on the verge of tears once again. Just then, my husband John came and stood beside me. "Emmy is now a part of our family, even without you disowning her. We are perfectly happy. Please go home," he defended me firmly. The employees also spoke out against my parents, saying, "Were you thinking? How rude. There are many people on my side here." As I realized that this was where I truly belonged, I felt profound happiness. My brother grew angrier and yelled, "Shut up, you country bumpkins. You're all low-educated trash, aren't you? Obey what we say in silence." But John calmly replied, "Well, both my father and I are Ivy League graduates, and Amy has graduated from a well-known agricultural university." This revelation about our educational background seemed to catch my brother by surprise. "Why are you farming despite being graduates of top universities?" he blurted out. John responded confidently, "Farming is a respectable profession where we can fully utilize what we studied in college." I couldn't help but burst into laughter amidst the tension of the situation. "Brother, you've lost to John in everything," I said, feeling a sense of relief. Perhaps I had been too afraid of my brother and parents. I wanted to make it unequivocal one last time. "We are already strangers." I paused for a moment, deliberately shifting to a more polite tone. "So, I can't lend or give money to strangers. Please, please leave. If you cause a disturbance or act violently, I'll call the police and take legal action." I made it clear that our ties were severed. My in-laws and husband moved closer to me to shield me from any harm that my parents and brother might cause. I was deeply moved by their protective presence, feeling truly cherished. The employees also chimed in, shouting at my parents to leave. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law glared at us with resentment, but had no choice but to retreat. According to a story I later heard from my cousin, my brother and parents had attempted to get rich quickly through a business venture, accumulating debts. Instead of seeking financial assistance from me, that arrogant attitude had led to a significant failure, and now they were on the brink of bankruptcy. However, I had no intention of getting involved anymore. For me, my work was thriving, and I was surrounded by a true family, including respectable in-laws, a loving husband, and adorable children. I treasured every day, savoring the joy of life. In the aftermath of the tense confrontation with my estranged family, life continued to unfold in remarkable ways. I found solace and happiness in the warmth of my in-laws and my husband John, who stood by my side unwaveringly. The unwavering support of my new family proved to be the greatest treasure I could have asked for. My business continued to thrive, and I expanded it even further, working alongside my dedicated team. The success of our venture allowed us to explore new opportunities and make a positive impact on the community. We continued to provide high-quality, sustainable, and affordable products to our customers, and our business became a beacon of hope for those who believed in the power of hard work and resilience. The love and support I received from my husband John were an endless source of strength and inspiration. We cherished every moment raising our wonderful children in a nurturing environment filled with love and respect. The bonds between us grew stronger each day, and our home was filled with laughter and joy. Over time, I rekindled relationships with my extended family, including my cousin who had reached out to me. We forged deep connections based on trust, mutual respect, and shared values, a testament to the fact that family goes beyond blood. It is built on love, understanding, and shared experiences. As for my estranged family, they continue to face their own challenges and consequences. I wished them well from a distance but remained steadfast in my decision to focus on my own path. The scars of the past were no longer an open wound, but a reminder of the strength and resilience I had discovered within myself. In the end, my story was one of triumph over adversity, of finding love and belonging in unexpected places, and of building a life based on my own values and aspirations. It was a testament to the power of choice and the incredible capacity of the human spirit to endure and thrive in the face of challenges. With the passage of time, my business continued to flourish and evolved into a community-focused enterprise. We started supporting local farmers and artisans, expanding our product range to showcase the talents of our region. Our commitment to sustainable practices, along with our dedication to quality, gained us a loyal customer base. This connection with our community allowed us to give back in various ways, from supporting local charities to hosting events that celebrated our shared values. As our children grew, we instilled in them the importance of hard work, empathy, and resilience. They witnessed firsthand the importance of family, not solely defined by blood, but by love and shared experiences. Our home became a sanctuary for their growth and development, fostering an environment where they felt loved, nurtured, and encouraged to pursue their dreams. The support from my in-laws remained unwavering. They were not just in-laws. They were the family I had chosen, and I couldn't be more grateful for their love and acceptance. My mother-in-law, in particular, became a cherished friend and confidant, offering her wisdom and guidance as I navigated life's challenges. Meanwhile, my cousin and I continued to build a strong and lasting bond. Our regular interactions allowed us to strengthen our connection, and we often found ourselves sharing life's joys and challenges. This relationship was a testament to the enduring power of chosen family, where genuine love and understanding prevailed. In the broader scope of life, I found solace in my decision to leave the past behind. While my estranged family faced their own trials, I focused on the present and the future. My husband, my children, and the people who surrounded me were my pillars of strength, reminding me that a loving, supportive family can be found in unexpected places. My story serves as a reminder that family is not solely defined by blood ties. It is a connection born from love, shared values, and mutual respect. I had come a long way from being disowned by my biological family, and the journey had made me stronger, more resilient, and deeply appreciative of the true meaning of family and the love that can be found in the most unexpected places. You can't even handle household chores, so we might as well get a divorce, Tom, he said with a smirk as he entered the hospital room. I was connected to various medical devices, and a girl I didn't recognize stood by his side. Little did Tom know I had assets worth $6 million, and divorce in this situation would be a matter of life and death for a housewife like me. Fine, he has the divorce papers, I thought to myself. I couldn't be with a man who verbally abused his wife in such a state. I reached into my bag, pulled out the divorce papers I'd always carried with me, and handed them to Tom with a grin. He accepted them. Now I can say goodbye to you. I'll be happy with her, so don't worry, Tom said as he wrapped his arm around the girl, referred to as Catherine Lyon. She sneered at me and said, "Take care, Misso. You're not Miss anymore. Take care, ma'am." With those words, the two of them left the hospital room, laughing. But their happiness would only last for now. Alone in the room, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Today was Friday, so the divorce would be processed on Monday. Oh, I couldn't wait for 3 days from now. My name is Annalie Johnson, a 45-year-old housewife from a regular farm. I didn't have any particular skills, but I was proud of my vast cooking repertoire. My husband, Tom, and I were the same age and had been college classmates. We both came to New York from the countryside, and since we lived alone, I used to cook various dishes for Tom using the vegetables and rice sent from my family. People often said I had captured his heart through his stomach, and I was aware of that. Tom was and still is incapable of doing any household chores. I had been taking care of him since we were dating, and after getting married, I continued to handle all household tasks. Sadly, we were not blessed with children, but we enjoyed our life together as a couple. We both loved to eat, and on Tom's days off, we'd often go on drives for small trips just to enjoy delicious food. When we first got married, Tom was kind. But about 3 years in, he became quite controlling. Well, he never laid a hand on me, but his remarks became curt, and he would often say things that hurt. But I didn't have the energy to fight back, assuming he wouldn't listen anyway. Because I was a full-time housewife, I felt inferior and couldn't stand up to him. Tom joined a renowned company after graduating from university, but he resigned after about 5 years. He quickly found new jobs, but would resign from them after short periods. Because of this, our income was unstable, and we often struggled with our finances. However, at the company he'd been with for the past 2 years, he seemed to get along with his colleagues. I had faint hopes that he might work there for a long time. Then one day, Tom came home earlier than usual. "I'm home. I quit my job." "What again?" I unintentionally voiced my surprise, causing Tom's eyebrows to twitch. In a panic, I stopped cooking and rushed over to him. "I'm sorry. I was just shocked." "Huh, no welcome back greeting, and you're criticizing. You've become quite audacious," Tom responded sharply. At Tom's words, I stiffened. He was in a very bad mood today, and if I misspoke, it could escalate into something worse. "I'm sorry," I said cautiously. "As long as you understand," he grumbled. My apology had somewhat placated him, and he sat on the sofa, turning on the TV. I quietly placed a beer and a glass on the table. "Do you want dinner or a bath?" I asked. "Food and alcohol," he replied. To avoid upsetting Tom, I played the role of the submissive wife. I once had a strong sense of self, but after 14 years of marriage to Tom since the age of 28, I rarely showed my true self. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Tom seemed to be in a better mood. He fell asleep on the sofa, snoring loudly. The table was in such disarray that it looked like a child had eaten there. I began cleaning up the fallen beer bottles and food scraps scattered on the floor. This wasn't how I had envisioned my married life. Memories of happier days as a young girl in love revealed my true feelings. I stole a glance at Tom, but he showed no signs of waking. Relief washed over me, but alongside it was a growing sense of dread about continuing this life. Perhaps divorce was a consideration. I started mentally organizing my schedule for the next day, determined to confront the issues I have been avoiding. The following day, while Tom began visiting the employment office and quickly securing another job, I went to the city office and signed divorce papers. I wasn't quite ready to submit them, but I felt having them would be a form of protection. I discreetly stashed the signed divorce papers at the bottom of my frequently used bag. If he were to discover them, who knew what he might say or do? "Hey, where did you wander off to while I was job hunting?" Tom asked upon my return. "I went to the stationery store to buy some reasons." "Look, I thought you might need them," I replied. Tom was unusually thoughtful that day. He initially interrogated me suspiciously, but quickly cheered up. I handed him the resumes I had bought earlier. After receiving them, Tom mentioned that he was going out for drinks with a friend and left. His new job was with a reputable company, offering a solid salary and better benefits than his previous positions. I harbored a secret hope that perhaps, this time, Tom would stick with his new job until retirement. His new department seemed to be in sales, and he started leaving home more frequently for evening entertainment. I cherished these brief moments of freedom and gathered the energy to greet Tom with a smile when he returned. One day, I received a call from my mother after a long time. She excitedly told me about an unexpected windfall of $6 million. "You know the mountains and lands we owned? We don't need them anymore. We had them appraised, and they are worth $8 million. We only need $1 million to enjoy the rest of our lives, so I think you might want to rethink your life too." My mother was never fond of Tom, and she had been worried about me, especially after Tom became more controlling, preventing me from even visiting my childhood home. The amount she mentioned stunned me, but what shocked me even more was that she had changed the title of the property inherited from my grandmother to my name to avoid inheritance taxes. It was a difficult decision whether to tell Tom about the inheritance or to embrace newfound freedom. About a week later, I was involved in a traffic accident. Thankfully, my life wasn't in danger, but I would need to be hospitalized for about a week. After securing my valuables in the hospital room drawer, I immediately contacted Tom. "I'm sorry I got injured." Tom's initial reaction was, "Huh? What about my meals?" I almost confronted him for prioritizing his meals over my injury, but I continued to explain, "It seems I'll need to be hospitalized for a week." "I'm really sorry, but could you buy your meals elsewhere until then?" Tom's response was far from understanding. "Not even preparing meals for your husband? What a lazy wife." "Oh, wait, I'm coming over now." He abruptly ended the call. I had initially planned to tell him about the inheritance that night, but now I wondered if it might be best not to mention it. As I lay in the hospital bed, surrounded by various tubes and undergoing precautionary examinations, I couldn't help but feel that my intuition about the unfolding events was about to prove correct. Tom's words had cut deep. "You're useless, can't even do housework. Let's get a divorce, and you better pay me compensation." With a smirk on his face, he had said this to me, connected to numerous medical devices. Beside him stood a girl I didn't recognize. Unaware that my total assets amounted to $6 million, he should have realized that a divorce under these circumstances would be a matter of life and death for me. "Fine, here are the divorce papers," I finally decided. A man who would hurl abuse at his wife in this condition was someone I'd rather not have. I handed over the divorce papers I had kept as a sort of charm, and Tom accepted them with a smug smile on his face. "With this, I can finally say goodbye to you. I'm going to be happy with her," he declared, wrapping his arm around the girl he referred to as Catherine. Catherine, the girl with Tom, leaned against him and made fun of me. "Take care, madam." "Oh, you're not a madam anymore." "Take care, old lady," she said. They left the room laughing, but their happiness wouldn't last long. In my hospital room, I burst out laughing. It was Friday, and the divorce papers would be processed on Monday. I couldn't wait for those 3 days. As expected, the weekend passed without any contact from Tom. It was quite peaceful, but I felt restless. I wasn't used to doing nothing. Every time I became restless, the nurses told me to stay calm. On Monday evening, I received a series of calls from Tom. At first, I ignored them, but after about 30 minutes of nonstop ringing, I decided to answer. I told him to stop being so persistent. Tom shouted at me as soon as I picked up, and I couldn't help but laugh, which seemed to make him even angrier. Tom was furious about the divorce papers not being accepted. I chuckled and told him that I had previously filed a notice of non-acceptance. I reminded him of how he used to casually mention getting divorced whenever we had a fight. I thought it wouldn't be a good idea if he filed for divorce on a whim during one of our arguments. Tom was upset but quickly changed his mind. He wanted me to withdraw the non-acceptance immediately. However, I had decided that I wouldn't just do everything he said anymore. I explained that I couldn't do it until I was discharged, and we needed to go through procedures at the municipal office before I could leave the hospital. Tom's selfish demands made me laugh even more. It seemed like he wanted to register his marriage with Catherine, whom he brought on Friday. Tom was panicking, and I asked if her name was Catherine and if she was his mistress. Tom clarified that she was his new wife, and since we weren't divorced yet, she technically was my mistress. I calmly responded to Tom's nonsensical remarks, making him groan. I made the decision to hit him where it hurt the most. I mentioned that he would hear from my lawyer about the division of property, including the trouble this time. I had always taken care of the household chores and had never cheated on him. It was clear that Tom was the responsible party, not me. Tom seemed genuinely puzzled and believed that not taking care of him while I was hospitalized would make me at fault. I explained patiently that not being able to do housework during my hospitalization didn't make me at fault. He had abandoned taking care of me, and even if I were a child, it would be considered neglect. But as an adult, he should be able to take care of himself, so it didn't make me at fault. Tom's logic was baffling, and even a judge would be shocked. Finally, he seemed to understand, but he still believed he was right. He insisted that Catherine was his new wife, and I was no longer of any use to him, so it didn't apply. I pointed out that he was dating her behind my back, which was clearly cheating. Tom still didn't seem to get it, and he believed he was right. I decided to end the conversation and told him to communicate through a lawyer from now on. I hung up the phone without listening to his protests. Tom called multiple times, but I ignored him, and eventually he gave up and fell silent. I was relieved, but the next day brought another headache. The phone kept ringing from 9 o'clock in the morning, and I pressed the call button. Tom complained about not being able to withdraw money from a bank account. If it was a joint account, he should be able to withdraw without any issues. But I remembered the bank cards and passbooks I had left at home and asked Tom if he was trying to access my account. Tom confirmed that he was trying to take money from my account. Tom was furious and continued with his unreasonable arguments. He didn't seem to understand what I had explained the day before. When I was going to be hospitalized for a week, I had called the bank to prevent any withdrawals until I could handle it personally after being discharged. This was to stop Tom, who wasn't careful with money, from using my savings while I was in the hospital. My decision turned out to be the right one. It's not right to try to take money from an ex-wife's account, especially after a divorce. However, Tom didn't see anything wrong with it and asked me to make a withdrawal immediately. I reminded him that we were practically strangers now, and I had no money to give to strangers. Tom was shocked by my resistance since I had never stood up to him like this before. He insisted that I send the money and pay compensation for not doing housework. Unfortunately, it seemed that despite his academic capability when we first met, he lacked common sense after 17 years of marriage. I addressed Tom as if he were a child, explaining that I was no longer his submissive wife, and we would settle the property division through a lawyer. He became angry and threatened to come over right away. I didn't mind if he came to the hospital. but I had already asked the nurse's station not to let anyone in except for my parents, so it was unlikely he could get to my room. However, Tom did come to the hospital, but it seemed he was stopped at the nurse's station as my phone kept ringing. After ignoring it for a while, it switched to messages, and my screen was flooded with notifications. I saved all of them as evidence and contacted my lawyer. After a while, it seemed that the lawyer had gotten in touch with Tom as the messages stopped coming in. Just when I thought it was over, there was a new development. I was informed about a visitor named Karen, whom I had known for a long time and shared my interests. She had responded to my posts about dining experiences on a social media platform. We used to go out for meals together before I got married. She expressed concern about my injury and shared her suspicions that Catherine, the young girl with Tom, was having an affair with my husband. I was shocked and asked her how she knew it. It turned out that Catherine was Karen's niece. She had told her sister, Karen's mother, about getting married to a 45-year-old man, and when Karen saw a photo, it was of my husband. I couldn't believe the twist of fate. Karen had already informed her sister about the trouble her niece had caused me. Karen was thinking of demanding compensation from Catherine and assured me that our friendship would continue. She didn't want to lose a precious friend over the situation. She had scheduled a meeting with them to sort things out. I was grateful for her support and friendship, which had lasted for over 20 years. The next day, after leaving the hospital, I went to a private restaurant room with my lawyer. Tom and Catherine were already there, enjoying an expensive traditional meal. I was surprised at their audacity. Tom reminded me to bring money and pay for the meal. I decided to stand up for myself and told them to handle the payment themselves. I was there to demand a share of the assets from both of them. Ignoring Tom's rude comments, my lawyer and I took our seats and presented evidence to show that Tom was at fault. We showed legal documents explaining why Tom was responsible and documents regarding the division of property. We'd also displayed photos provided by Karen, which showed Tom and Catherine together and Catherine with an unknown man entering a hotel. This surprised Tom and Catherine, and they stopped eating. Karen arrived at the right moment and admitted to taking those photos. Catherine was confused about her aunt being there. Karen explained that she wanted to continue being friends with me, even though she demanded compensation from Catherine. She felt that Catherine's actions were despicable. Catherine mentioned being pregnant, but when Karen saw her, she didn't look pregnant at all. Tom seemed shocked by this news, and Catherine suddenly admitted that she had lied about the pregnancy and apologized. She had been looking for wealthy older men, and Tom was the one who fell for her scheme. She confessed that she had lied about being pregnant because Tom showed no signs of wanting to divorce. Tom was speechless, claiming he had no money to give. Karen mentioned that she would bring Catherine for another apology later and took her out of the restaurant. Tom tried to convince me that he had been deceived and asked if we could start over. He said I couldn't work since I had always been a housewife. I told him I could live without him and that I'd be filing the divorce papers soon. I revealed that I had around $6 million in personal net worth, so I could live comfortably without working. Tom was surprised and wanted a share of my money, but I explained that it was my personal inheritance and didn't count as marital assets. We left, and I filed for divorce, ending our nearly 20-year marriage. Catherine later transferred some money to my account, and her mother made her work to prepare the compensation. Tom was disowned by his in-laws and had to take out a loan to pay me. He lost his job due to being with Catherine at a hotel during work hours and now works multiple construction jobs to repay his debts. I used the money I received for charity and moved to the countryside with the remaining amount. I'm now enjoying a luxurious single life, continuing my relationship with Karen. We plan to stay single and even share a room, go on food tours, and take short trips together. Moving preparations will begin next week, and I'm excited to live life joyfully and true to myself from now on. About the $3 million, I've made a decision to divide it between my mom and me. This decision came shortly after my father's funeral. Jack, after perusing the inheritance documents without seeking permission, remarked to me, "Kelly, don't be too greedy. Oh, finally, I can quit my job. I have to thank that doddering old man." Doddering old man? Are you talking about my dad? I inadvertently blurted out. Disregarding my confusion, Jack and my mother-in-law enthusiastically discussed plans to buy a new car and go shopping. Faced with this unexpected turn of events, I could no longer contain my emotions. I was on the brink of exploding, burdened with household chores, asked for money, and to top it off, they'd insulted my father. I didn't want to live with Jack and my mother-in-law anymore. Suppressing my anger, I forced a smile and replied, "Sure, feel free to use the money as you and my mother-in-law please. I am Kelly Cohan, a 38-year-old housewife working alongside my husband. My parents were doctors who ran a well-reputed clinic in our hometown. As an only child, I was showered with love. After graduating from the School of Pharmacy, I secured a job at a major pharmaceutical company. Although my parents were disappointed I didn't become a doctor, they respected my decision. 10 years ago, my mother unexpectedly died in an accident, leaving me and my father devastated. During those difficult times, Jack, then my boyfriend, supported me. We met through a mutual friend, and 2 years after my mother's passing, Jack proposed. Jack was an ordinary salaryman in the food and beverage industry. Despite earning significantly more, I believed we could overcome any difficulty and be a happy couple. My father was overjoyed when I told him about our engagement. "I've heard how Jack supported you, Kelly. Thank you so much. Please continue to take care of her," he said. Facing my father, Jack stood straight and promised, "I will make her happy." Standing next to Jack, I was enveloped in feelings of happiness. The following week, we went to Jack's family home to announce our marriage. His mother, with flashy makeup and divorced from Jack's father, evaluated me rudely. "Marriage, huh? You're Jack's choice, are you? Isn't she a bit plain for your choice? And she's older, right? Wouldn't a younger and prettier girl be better for you?" Jack quickly retorted, "Mom, you know M Pharmaceuticals, right? Kelly works there. Her father is a doctor and runs his practice." I expected Jack to praise my character, but instead, he emphasized the financial advantages. Hearing this, his mother's expression changed to one of satisfaction. "Oh, Jack, you should have told me such important things earlier. That changes everything. I happily approve of the marriage. Nice to meet you, Kelly. Thank you." After gaining approval for our marriage from Jack's mother, Jack was overjoyed. However, I couldn't shake off a sense of unease. Despite things going smoothly, and our decision to get married, when we were about to register our marriage, my father, a doctor and real estate investor, gifted me an apartment in a luxury building in New York City. I told Jack, "Dad has given me this apartment as a wedding gift, but it's our new home. Let's live here happily and peacefully together." Jack smiled happily, and thus our married life began. However, after getting married, I realized something unsettling. Jack, who had lived with his parents until then, was almost incapable of doing household chores. He couldn't cook, didn't know how to use the washing machine, and showed no interest in learning. He would leave his garbage scattered around, not bothering to throw it away. While I wanted to diligently share household responsibilities, Jack's careless attitude increased my dissatisfaction. In the first year of marriage, I took on all the household responsibilities despite some complaints, given that we were still in the honeymoon phase. But with the exhaustion from work and struggling to keep up with chores, I reached my limit in our second year. Deciding to have a serious talk with Jack about sharing household duties, I bravely expressed my dissatisfaction. To my dismay, Jack responded without gratitude or reflection, saying, "I'm tired from work too. You're much better at chores than I am, right? It's better if you do them since I'm not good at it." Dismissed just like that, Jack hardly helped with the chores, and I continued to bear the brunt of our household responsibilities. But that wasn't the only problem. After marrying Jack, I discovered his mother also had some peculiar ideas. Jack wasn't very interested in seasonal events, so I decided to send a quality scarf and carnations to his mother for Mother's Day. Despite choosing a nice scarf from a department store, his mother called me sounding displeased. She criticized the scarf, saying it wasn't from a famous brand and was absurd to send such a no-name item. I tried to explain its quality, but she wouldn't listen, insisting she wanted items from a very famous luxury brand. Stunned, I reported this to Jack when he returned home. But instead of empathizing, he said, "What? It's just do as she said." Jack didn't take my side, and from then on, we started giving her cash as she demanded. Moreover, by our 5th year of marriage, she began visiting our home frequently, always finding reasons to ask for money. Jack, without any complaints, would always smile and give money to his mother. Even though I had a job, Jack's income was limited and small, making our daily life just barely manageable. Desperation led me to dip into our savings to cut living expenses. Despite my frustrations, I knew Jack cherished his mother, and she was an important person to me, having supported me during tough times. She's the mother of someone important to me, and with that thought, I endured. Now, in our 8th year of marriage, I continue to handle all the household chores and keep giving money to my mother-in-law. One day during this routine, my father, whom I hadn't seen in a while, unexpectedly called me. The story he shared during our rare meeting was shockingly unexpected. He revealed that he was suffering from terminal cancer, and treatment was no longer possible. Overwhelmed with shock, tears spilled from my eyes. My father gently stroked my head, just as he did when I was a child, saying, "Kelly, this is fate. Let's accept it quietly." I questioned, "Dad, why even you?" Thus, my days became a juggling act of work, household duties, and now visits to my father's hospital. While work allowed some flexibility, managing the household was not easy. When I told Jack I would be caring for my father, he showed no reaction or willingness to help. "Well, it's tough with your father's sudden condition, but please do your best," was the only thing Jack said. He visited my father in the hospital only once. I was so preoccupied with my father's care that I had no time to spare for Jack. If I had time to worry about Jack, I wanted to prioritize my father. One day, as my father lay in his hospital bed, he suddenly asked me, "Kelly, how is your marriage with Jack going?" Caught off guard, I found myself thinking about Jack's attitude at home and his mother's behavior. I couldn't answer properly. Seeing my hesitation, my father seemed to understand and spoke to me, "Kelly, you don't have to endure. Think about your happiness. Don't worry. You won't have any hardships after I'm gone." I couldn't hold back my tears and wept, and my father silently and firmly held my hand. 3 months later, the inevitable moment arrived. My father passed away quietly. Engulfed in immense sorrow, I started arranging the funeral. Jack, however, showed no interest in my grief and didn't help with any preparations. Despite this, I was too busy with the funeral arrangements to pay much attention to Jack. Many friends and acquaintances attended my father's funeral, making it a heartfelt farewell. Even the indifferent Jack and his mother attended. The day after the funeral, I received a call from a lawyer about my father's inheritance. I arranged a meeting with the lawyer and listened to the explanation. The information was all new and quite surprising. After deducting taxes like inheritance tax, my father's estate amounted to over $3 million. He had not only earned income as a doctor, but also made real estate investments, leaving behind such a vast fortune, all of it to be inherited by me, his only daughter. Wrapped in surprise and gratitude, yet trembling at the thought of handling such a huge amount of money, I proceeded with the inheritance process. After returning home, I spread out the documents received from the lawyer on my desk. Reading through them, exhaustion overwhelmed me, and I ended up dozing off on the sofa for a short while. When I awoke, I heard the cheerful voices of Jack and his mother from afar. "Huh, Jack and mother too. When did you come?" As I spoke, Jack approached me with a beaming smile, saying, Yes, Kelly, well done. Huh, what? Confused by his sudden excitement. I noticed the documents in Jack's hand. They were the inheritance papers I had received from the lawyer. Wait, don't just read those without asking. Shocked and angry at Jack for looking through the documents without permission, I raised my voice at him. However, my mother-in-law, unconcerned, happily chimed in, "Wow, an inheritance of $3 million. Isn't that amazing? Now we can live comfortably for the rest of our lives." Confused, I couldn't understand why my mother-in-law suddenly said that. Then Jack turned serious and continued, "By the way, about this $3 million, I've decided that it will be split between me and my mom." It was right after my father's funeral. Jack, having looked at the documents related to the inheritance I was supposed to receive without permission, said to me, "Kelly, don't be too greedy." Oh, now I can finally quit my job. I have to thank that doddering old man. Doddering old man, are you talking about my dad? I accidentally said it out loud. Well, anyway, let's proceed with the inheritance process and get the money into our joint account as soon as possible. Ignoring my confusion over this sudden turn of events, Jack and my mother-in-law were excitedly talking about buying a new car and shopping. At that moment, I couldn't hold back my emotions any longer. I was on the verge of exploding, being burdened with household chores, asked for money, and to top it off, they insulted my father. While holding back my anger, I replied with a forced smile, "Sure, use the money you and my mother-in-law, please, as you wish." Hearing this, my mother-in-law, seemingly satisfied, said cheerfully, "That's the spirit, Kelly." Quick to agree. "Now make sure you work hard and earn money. I don't want our savings to decrease, so work hard." I just nodded and pretended to listen to her selfish words. Afterward, Jack and my mother-in-law began living as if they had lost their minds, consuming money lavishly. Jack quickly quit his job, and my mother-in-law practically moved in with us, staying at our house constantly. They would leave in the morning, returning with luxury brand items they had splurged on. The 3-star restaurant we went to today wasn't as great as I expected. Yes, it was a bit underwhelming for us, the sophisticated ones. They had conversations as if they had become wealthy celebrities while dumping all the housework on me as if I were a maid. Jack seemed to think my father's inheritance would come through immediately. He carelessly withdrew money from our joint account, and my savings of $100,000 dwindled rapidly. When I protested their excessive spending, Jack just laughed it off. "Huh, what are you talking about? Isn't $3 million coming soon? Then this kind of spending is no big deal." I warned him, "I've already stopped it." But Jack completely ignored me. Then, a month later, Jack and my mother-in-law suddenly left for a trip to Hawaii. I wasn't invited and was left alone at home. After seeing them off, I decided to take action. About a week later, while I was relaxing at home, I heard a loud knock on the door, wondering what was happening. I glanced at the intercom monitor and saw Jack and my mother-in-law, both dressed in aloha shirts, standing at the front door. What do you want?" I asked calmly and coldly. Red with anger, Jack yelled, "What are you even talking about? Why won't the door open?" Seeing Jack and my mother-in-law confused as to why the door wouldn't open, I confidently answered through the intercom, "Well, I changed the locks on the door, so of course, it won't open." "What? Why? Let's talk over this calmly at the nearby cafe." "Please go ahead. I'll join you shortly," I suggested. Jack and his mother, after shouting in front of the entrance, seemingly realized it was futile and soon headed to the cafe. Once I confirmed they had left, I made my way to the cafe. Arriving there, I saw Jack and his mother, who had arrived earlier, waiting in a state of fury. "Hey, what's this about? Did you change the locks? Hand over the new keys right now." "There's no need for me to give you the new keys. You both need to leave that house," I calmly told Jack and his mother. Facing a visibly angry Jack, I presented a piece of paper. It was a divorce petition I had already filled out. "Divorce? You're serious about divorcing me?" His mother was equally shocked and bewildered. "Kelly, why has it come to this?" I spoke quietly to the two who were panicking and flustered. "By the way, you've been spending lavishly every day. Are you sure your finances are okay?" "What money?" "Of course, it's fine," Jack retorted vehemently, spitting as he spoke. "Your father's inheritance is coming, right? There should still be over $50,000 in our joint account. Look, I'll show you right now. Here it is." Saying this, Jack took out his smartphone and opened the banking app to check the account. At that moment, his expression changed abruptly. "What? What's this? Why is the money gone? It was there just the other day." Hearing Jack's words, his mother also hurriedly looked at her phone, her face showing confusion. I revealed the truth to them as they were panicking, not understanding the situation. "Of course it's gone. I'm divorcing you." So I moved that $50,000 to my account as part of the property division. "What? What do you mean?" Jack's face turned to anger for a moment. But then he smirked, as if remembering something. "Fine, I'll divorce you then. Transfer the inheritance you got from your dad right away. After all, property acquired during the marriage is split half and half in a divorce, right?" "Well, you might be misunderstanding something." I replied, "Why didn't you know? The inheritance I received, even though it was during our marriage, doesn't count for property division." There was a moment of silence between us. Then Jack and his mother's expressions changed drastically. Perhaps they truly believed they would receive part of my inheritance. I was just astonished and could only sigh in disbelief. "No, that can't be true. That's impossible." Her face turned red with a mix of denial and anger. "Please check for yourself," I said mockingly. Jack started frantically searching on his smartphone. "It says here, property inherited by one spouse from a parent is considered separate property. Therefore, it's not subject to division and can't be split between the spouses." "What? Seriously?" His mother too looked at the screen in shock. Then Jack approached me, pleading desperately, "Kelly, please don't divorce me. I have no savings and no job. How am I supposed to live if you divorce me?" Faced with Jack's whining, I spoke to him clearly and firmly. "What are you talking about? Take responsibility for your actions. I will never forget how you both treated me. I'm divorcing you. I'll go to court if I have to." Intimidated by my fierce demeanor, which they had never seen before, Jack and his mother shrunk back in fear, whimpering softly. Leaving the two of them dejected, I walked out of the cafe. Later on, Jack and I were able to go through the divorce proceedings without any issues. The $50,000 I had moved from our joint account was recognized as part of the marital property division. Eventually, I managed to get Jack and his mother out of my house. Jack, having already squandered the money from the property division, found himself penniless. Furthermore, he was overwhelmed with bills from the overseas trip and other expenses he had paid for with his credit card, quickly sinking into debt. Jack and his mother had to take on even more debt to make these payments, and they now live in a rundown apartment, working tirelessly every day to pay off their debts. The stark contrast to their former lavish lifestyle has been a huge shock for them. On the other hand, I sold the condo I used to share with Jack. I then moved into the apartment that used to belong to my father. I continue to work as before, but with the inheritance I received from my father, I am living a comfortable life financially. With gratitude to my late father in my heart, I want to start anew and cherish my life ahead. I aim to protect my happiness and spend my days peacefully.